You've seen landfall decks before, but what if every land you played pinged the table and refilled your hand? That's exactly what Tannuk does best. Once the lands start falling, the pressure keeps snowballing. Hi everyone, I'm Full Harmonicon and welcome back to the channel. Today we're exploring a landfall deck with a bit of a twist. Usually, landfall builds pack the deck with as many landfall payoffs as possible, and let the commander support the engine. But here, the commander is the engine, the card draw, and the main win condition, all in one neat little package. It's time to make landfall with Tannuk, Memorial Ensign. And if you love playing a whole lot of lands, drawing cards when you do, and turning every land drop into damage, this deck is absolutely for you. Tannuk is a 2/4 Kavu pilot for 3 mana, and they only have one block of text. Landfall: whenever a land you control enters, Tannuk deals 1 damage to each opponent. And if this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, you draw a card. And honestly, that's the whole deck. Play lands, ping the table, hit that second trigger, draw a card, then do it all again. The deck isn't really trying to win with one huge creature or a flashy combat step. Every land drop looks small on its own, but once you're dropping multiple lands per turn, the damage adds up incredibly quickly. The strategy here couldn't be simpler. First, we get Tannuk online. Then, we start ramping as hard and as fast as possible. And finally, we win by burning the entire table down through repeated landfall triggers. If you enjoy synergy-focused commander breakdowns like this, hit that subscribe. There's a lot more on the way. Normally, I leave ramp until the end of the video, but here, ramp is the game plan. Let's start with the instant speed ramp spells: Harrow, Roiling Regrowth, Entish Restoration, and Cycle of Renewal. These are fantastic because they can be played on an opponent's turn, grab 2 lands, trigger Tannuk twice, and guarantee we draw a card. Then, we've got cards that let us play extra lands every turn. First up is the Green Soul Ring, Exploration. If we get this down early, we'll be pinging and drawing cards with Tannuk in no time. Azusa, Lost but Seeking, lets us play 2 extra lands per turn, which is exactly the kind of effect this deck wants. Loot, Exuberant Explorer only gives us 1 extra land per turn, but later on they also double as card advantage, which is very welcome when we're trying to keep the engine going. Dryad of the Ilysian Grove gives us an extra land drop and fixes our mana by letting our colorless lands and fetch lands tap for any color. Mina and Den, Wildborn, and Zeldinch both give an extra land per turn and a way to get lands back to our hand, so we can play them again for even more triggers. Explore is simple, clean, and efficient. It lets us play an extra land once and replaces itself with another card in hand. Then we have our straight land ramp. Planar Engineering only technically ramps us for 2, but 4 mana for 4 landfall triggers is awesome here. Rampant Growth, Nature's Law, 3 Visits, Farseek, and Shared Roots are all great 2 mana ways to get an extra land into play. Sakura Tribe Elder, aka Steve, makes an appearance as a classic reliable ramp creature. Cultivate and Kodoma's Reach ramp us for 1 while grabbing a second land for our hand, which in this deck we can probably just play anyway. Now let's talk about how we actually close out the game. Sabotender, Tunneling Geopede, and Spitfire Lagac all provide extra ways to ping our opponents whenever our lands enter. They basically double up on what Tannuk is already doing. Then, we have damage amplifiers. Torbran, Thane of Red Fell, makes every ping from Tannuk and the previously mentioned cards hit for 3 at a time. Suddenly, a simple fetch land can represent a scary amount of damage. Ojer Axonil, Deepest Might, takes that even further by making all of our landfall pinging effects hit for 4 at a time. And because he can turn into a land and transform back later, it's also incredibly hard to remove permanently. Pair these effects with Scapeshift and we can end the game out of nowhere. Sacrifice a pile of lands, bring in a fresh pile, and let all those landfall triggers do the talking. Yes please. Now, fetch lands get much better when we can play them repeatedly. Ancient Greenwarden is basically a pan-harmonicon for landfall triggers. A land harmonicon if you will. so one fetch land can net us 4 Tannuk triggers. But it also lets us play lands from our graveyard. Crucible of Worlds and Ramunap Excavator let us recycle all our fetch lands for more value, turning the graveyard into an extension of our hand. Icetal Explorer lets us play extra lands per turn, but also lets us play lands from our graveyard. It also helps fill the graveyard, which works really well with itself. Conduit of Worlds lets us play lands from the graveyard and can also tap to play a permanent spell from the grave, giving us a bit of extra staying power. Aftermath Analysis and Splendid Reclamation can return all the lands we've lost along the way back to the battlefield. In this deck, there can be a huge burst of damage and momentum all at once. Tannuk is already drawing us a bunch of cards, but more is always better. Keen Sense and Snake Umbra are both absolutely insane here. With one of these attached, each ping from Tannuk can draw us up to 3 cards. Snake Umbra even acts as an extra layer of protection for our commander. Yes please. Corso of Crufix lets us play lands from the top of our library. While that might not seem like much, with a well-timed fetch land or ramp spell, this effect gets a lot better. Oracle of Maldaya and Case of the Locked Hothouse let us play more lands per turn, and we get to play lands straight off the top of our deck. Traveling Chocobo does the same, but it's also another land harmonicon that lets us double landfall triggers, which just means more pings from Tannuk. Valakut Exploration impulse draws a card every time one of our lands enter, and if we don't get a chance to play those cards, it helps ping our opponents as well. Cultivator Colossus is just so much fun. Sometimes it completely whiffs and we run out of lands. Other times, it draws a whole bunch of cards, triggers a whole bunch of pings, and leaves us with an enormous threat. Now, let's take a look at some synergistic interaction options. World Soul's Rage deals X damage to any target, then lets us put X lands from our hand or graveyard into play. Broken Bond destroys an artifact or enchantment and lets us put a land from our hand into play. Siege Ship Impact also destroys an artifact or enchantment and then gives us a lander token, which is basically a Wayfarer's Bauble. Archdruid's Charm gives us flexibility. We can exile a problematic artifact or enchantment, or we can search our deck for a land and put it straight into play. Sylvan Safekeeper lets us sacrifice a land to give our commander or any other creature we control Shroud. Collective Resistance and Untimely Malfunction offer removal or protection depending on what we need at the time. And the rest of our interaction package is made up of staples like Beast Within, Chaos Warp, and Nature's Claim. And finally, the lands. I normally don't just throw fetch lands into any deck, but here, Wooded Foothills, Windswept Heath, Verdant Catacombs, and Misty Rainforest all become super powerful. They can trigger landfall twice in one turn, and if we save 2 for an opponent's turn, they can help Tannuk draw cards. Fabled Passage can be activated to fetch a basic land. Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, and Escape Tunnel are basically the same concept, just a bit slower because the lands enter tapped. Cabaretti Courtyard and Riveteer's Outlook sacrifice themselves on entry, then fetch a basic. That's already enough to get a card from Tannuk. Myriad Landscape and Blighted Woodland are ramp spells staple to lands that can be activated at instant speed to draw cards on opponents' turns. Tannuk Memorial Ensign is such a cool spin on landfall. Turning every land drop into direct damage gives the archetype a fresh feel. It rewards you for doing what landfall decks already want to do while keeping pressure on the entire table. And because the card draw is built into the commander, it's surprisingly easy to keep the engine running. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more synergy-based commander content. If you'd like to support the channel further and help vote on future videos, memberships are available. And hey, if you're picking up any of these cards, consider using my TCG player affiliate link down below. And until next time, may all your lands ping your opponents.